Hey everybody, did you know you can go to colinmullen.com in order to get art and art prints? It's why I've made the website, colinmullen.com. So hey everybody, a bit of a different painting. I say that every week. I have like no cohesive style, I guess. No, it's skulls in certain colors, I guess, is the draw through. But there's no skulls in this one, though it does have those colors that I love. I want to start messing around with tessellation, or at least I thought I did. So I was like, okay, let's do the simplest version of tessellation possible, and that's cubes, I think. You could tessellate with, I guess, spheres or something like that, but cubes have a nice, easy pattern to do. So that's what I'm doing this week. It doesn't particularly mean anything. I streamed myself working on it the other day, and you know what? I kind of hate doing this. Like, it looks cool. And, the end result is really nice, and I feel like it's very clean, and I feel like I did a decent job of it, but it's so much slower and so much more technical than my normal work, so I kind of hate it. Just the process of making it. I'll think about it some on whether or not I want to do anything similar to it in the future, but for now, I think I'm going to skip working in this style for a while. But it was good to get that experiment before I tried to figure out, okay, how do I do tessellation with more complex subjects, with more complex shapes, because I learned a lot through doing this, and sometimes that's what it's like to do art. Anyway, that's enough about this painting. Let's talk about today's thing, and that is going to be me reading a classic. I think everyone in high school had to read this one. Middle school, whatever, one of those grades, whatever you call it across the pond there. It's the Cask of Amontillado. Am I pronouncing that right? No, probably not, but I'm gonna pronounce it that way for the rest of this. It's good. It's a classic. If you guys have any other things you want me to talk about, or any stories you'd like me to read, let me know. But I think it's a bit of, like the kiddos say, a mood, my dude. The 1,000 injuries of Fortuno I had borne as best as I could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You so well know the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that I gave utterance to threat. At length I would be avenged. This was a point definitely settled, but the very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. A wrong is unaddressed when the retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. It must be understood that neither by word nor deed I had given Fortuno cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my end, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my to smile now was at the thought of his immolation. He had a weak point, this Fortuno. Although in other regards he was a man to be respected and even feared, he prided himself on connoisseurship in wine. Few Italians have true virtuoso spirit. For the most part, their enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and opportunity, to practice imposture upon the British and Austrian millionaires. In painting and in gimmery, Fortuno, like his countrymen, was a quack. But in the matter of old wines he was sincere. In this respect I did not differ from him materially. I was skillful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could. It was at about dusk one evening during the supreme madness of carnival season that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with excessive warmth, for he had been drinking too much. The man wore motley. He had a tight-fitting party striped dress, and his head was surmounted by a conical cap and bells. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should never have done wringing his hands, and I said to him, "My dear Fortuno, you are luckily met. How remarkable well you are looking today. But I received a pipe of what passes for Amontillado, and I have my doubts." "How?" he said. "Amontillado, a pipe? Impossible! And in the middle of carnival? I have my doubts." I replied, "And I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you in this matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain. Amontillado! I have my doubts. Amontillado! I must satisfy them. Amontillado! As you are engaged, I am on my way to Lutresi. If one has critical turn, it is he. He will tell me. Lutresi cannot tell Amontillado from sherry, and yet some fools will have it in his taste is a match for your own. Come, let's go. Whither? To your vaults. My friend, no, I will not impose on your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement, Lutresi. I have no engagement. Come. My friend, no, it is not the engagement, but the severe cold which I have perceived you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp. They are encrusted with niter. Let us go nonetheless. The cold is merely nothing. Amontillado! You have been imposed on. And as for Lutresi, he cannot distinguish sherry from Amontillado. Thus speaking, Fortuna possessed himself of my arm, and putting on a mask of black silk and drawing a reliquary close about my person, I suffered him to hurry me to my palazzo. There were no attendants at home. They had absconded to make merry in honor of the time, and I had told them that I should not return until morning, and given them explicit orders to not stir from the house. The orders were sufficient, I well knew, to ensure their immediate disappearance, one and all. As soon as my back was turned, I took from their sconces 2 flambeaux, and giving one to Fortuno, bowed him through the several suites of rooms to the archway that led to the vaults. I passed down a long and winding staircase and requested him to be cautious as he followed. We came at length to the floor of the descent and stood together upon the damp ground of the catacombs of the Montresor. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode. The pipe, he said, is further on, said I. But observe the white webwork which gleams from the cavern walls. He turned to me, and looked into my eyes with the 2 filmy orbs that distilled the rim of intoxication. Niter? He asked. At length, niter, I replied. How long have you had that cough? My poor friend found it impossible to reply for many minutes. It's nothing, he said, at last. Come, I said, with decision. We will go back. Your health is precarious. You are rich, respected, admired, beloved. You are happy, as once I was. You are a man to be missed. For me it is no matter. We will go back. You will be ill. I cannot be responsible. Besides, there is Lutresi. Enough, he said. The cough is merely nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough. True, I replied. And indeed, I had no intention of alarming you unnecessarily, but you should use all proper caution. A draught of this Merlot will defend us from the damps. Here. I knocked off the neck of a bottle which drew from a long row of its fellows that lay upon the mold. Drink, I said, presenting him the wine. He raised it to his lips with a leer, and he paused and nodded to me familiarly. I drink, he said, to the buried that repose around us, and to your long life. He again took my arm, and we proceeded. The vaults, he said, are extensive. The Montresor, I replied, were a great numerous family. I forget your arms. A huge human foot door, in field azure. The foot crushes a serpent rampant whose fangs are embedded in the heel. And the motto? Nemo me impure lacet. Good, he said. The wine sparkled in his eyes and the bells jingled. My own fancy grew warm with the Merlot. We had passed through long walls of piled skeletons with casks and puncheons intermingling into the innermost recesses of the catacomb. I paused again, and at this time I made bold to seize Fortuno by the arm above the elbow. The niter, I said. See, it increases. It hangs like moss upon the vaults. We are below the riverbed, and it drops the moisture trickle among the bones. Come, we must go back, ere it is too late. Your cough, it's nothing, he said. Let us go on. But first, another draught of Merlot. I broke and reached him a flagon of de Grave. He emptied it at a breath, and his eyes flashed with a fierce light. He laughed and threw the bottle upward and gesticulated. I did not understand. I looked at him in surprise. He repeated the movement, a grotesque one. Do you not comprehend? Not I replied. Then are you not of the Brotherhood? How? You are not of the Masons? Yes, I said. Yes. You? Impossible. A Mason? A Mason, I replied. A sign, he said. A sign. It is this, I answered, producing beneath the folds of the reliquary a trowel. You jest, he exclaimed, recoiling a few paces. But let us proceed to the Amontillado. Be it so, I said, replacing the tool beneath the cloak and again offering him my arm, and leaned on it heavily. We continued our route in search of the Amontillado, and we passed through a range of low arches, descended, passed on, and descending again, arriving at a deep crypt, in which the foulness of the air caused our flambeaux rather to glow rather than flame. At the most remote end of the crypt, there appeared another less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains piled to the vault overhead, in a fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. 3 sides of the interior crypt were still ornamented in this manner. From the 4th side, the bones had been thrown down and laid promiscuously amongst the earth, forming at one point a mound of some size. Within the walls, thus exposed by displacing of bones, we perceived a still interior crypt, or recess, in depth about 4 feet, in within 3, and the height of 6 or 7, and it seems to be constructed of no special use within itself, but forcefully mere the interval between the 2 of the colossal supports of the roof and the catacombs, and was backed by one of the circumscribing walls of solid granite. It was in vain that Fortuno, uplifting his dull torch, endeavored to pry into the depths of the recess. His termination the feeble light did not enable us to see. "Proceed," I said. "Herein is the Amontillado. As for Lutresi—" "He's an ignoramus," interrupted my friend, as he stepped unsteadily forward, while I immediately followed on his heels. In niche, and finding the instant that he had reached the extremity of the niche, and finding his progress had rested by a rock, stood stupidly bewildered. A moment more, and I had fettered him to the granite. In its surface were 2 iron staples, distant from each other by about 2 feet horizontally. From one of these depended a sort of chain, from the others a padlock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was too much astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess. "Pass your hand," I said, "over the wall. You cannot help feeling the niter. Indeed, it is very damp. Once more, let me implore you to return." "No? Then I must positively leave you. But first, render you all the little attentions of my power." "The Amontillado!" ejaculated my friend. "Not yet recovered from astonishment." "True," I replied, "the Amontillado." As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones which I had before spoken. Throwing them aside, soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar. And with these materials and the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche, and I had scarcely laid the first tier of masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortuno had in great measure worn off. The earliest indication of this was a low moaning cry from the depth of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. There was a long, obstinate silence. I laid the 2nd tier, the 3rd, and the 4th, and then I heard the furious vibration of chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which I might hearken to it with more satisfaction. I ceased my labors and sat down upon the bones. When the last of the clanking subsided, I resumed the trowel, and finishing without interruption the 5th and 6th and 7th tier, the walls now nearly above the level of my breast, and again paused, holding the flambeau over the mason work, and threw the feeble rays upon the figure within. Succession of loud and shrill screams bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form. It seemed to me thrust me back violently. For a moment I hesitated. I trembled, unsheathing my rapier. I began to grope with it about the recess, but the thought of it instantly reassured me. I placed my hand upon solid fabric of the catacombs, and felt satisfied. I approached the wall. I replied to the yells of him who clambered. I re-echoed, I aided, I surpassed them in volume and strength, and I did this, and the clamberer still grew. It was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th, 9th, and 10th tier. I had finished a portion of the last and the 11th. There still remained but one single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position. But now there came from out the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty recognizing as that of the noble Fortuno. He said, "Ha ha, hee hee, a very good joke indeed, an excellent jest. We will have a many rich laugh about it in the Palazzo. Hee hee, over our wine, hee hee. The Amontillado," he said, hee hee, hee hee. "Yes, the Amontillado. But is it not getting late? Will they not be awaiting for us at the Palazzo, the Lady Fortuna and the rest? Let us be gone." "Yes," I said, "let us be gone. For the love of God, monsieur." "Yes," I said, "for the love of God." But to those words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud, "Fortuno!" No answer. I called again, "Fortuno!" No Answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within, and there came in return only a jingling of the bells. My heart grew sick. It was the dampness of the catacombs that made me so. I hastened to make an end to my labor and forced the last stone into position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry, I erected the old ramparts of bone. In peace, requiescent. That's a good one. For some reason, I couldn't remember why he would just stay in there, and it's because he's chained to the wall. It's been a minute since I've read that one. That makes a lot more sense. It's kind of weird for someone to be like, hey, get in this hole. I mean, you know, guy was not the sharpest bulb on the string, and it seems a bit much, but there's definitely some people I would bury in a wall. You know what I mean? Like, they've kind of messed with you, and you'd bury... I don't know why. If you look up on Wikipedia, it says that Monsieur is the bad guy in this story. I guess he does kill him, so that's kind of bad. That's kind of messed up, isn't it? But anyway, let me thank the people on Patreon who allow me to continue being me, whether or not that's a good thing or not. No matter how much you give, $1 more, it means a lot to me, man. It allows me to do these art videos, and if there's something you want me to talk about or a story you want me to read, let me know and I'll do so. But let me thank the people at the $5 tier or more, especially because they pay to be in these credits. So thank you, Wapfu. Thank you, Top Houndor. Thank you, Targo. Thank you, Snoutpunk. Thank you, Orthogonal Caster. Thank you, Mortibus. Thank you, Micah. Thank you, Maliciousness. Thank you, Lost Nevada. Thank you, Kayla Hollinger. Thank you, Katana Squirrel. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Gala. Thank you, Dragon. Thank you, Demetrius Gezgalez. Thank you, Chiptune Glitch. Thank you, Bubba Fair. Thank you, Bep. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Amber. And thank you, Ants! So I'll be expecting the 2-page, double-spaced write-up of the meaning of the Cask of Amontillado on my desk by next week. If you don't get it there, then you'll get a failing grade, and you wouldn't want that, would you? Just gave myself a few nightmares right there, remembering that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!